live.
Screw it. Let's do it live. Let's not even wait for Casey.
Forget
you, Casey. We're live now. Forget you, Casey.
Hey.
Forget you, Russo.
Oh, Russo decided to join right as we were going live. Hello.
Oh, he's in there. Darn it.
Oh, no.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Is Russo here? Are you going to let him in?
Yeah,
okay, there he is.
Russo.
Hey.
Hey, what's up? Sorry for the delay, guys.
Russo, you look like a freaking Australian down under animal
me?
goddamn explorer, bro.
Drew, nice to meet you, man. I love your stuff. Love your content.
You look like Eliza Thornberry's daddy. Y'all remember the Thornberries? The wild Thornberries?
But hey, just thank the Lord he did not come with the glasses and the tank top this week. Okay.
It's great to meet you also, Anthony. I'm a little more comfortable knowing that your back is waxed.
Oh.
Truth.
Freshly waxed back and everything.
Kevin, did you not watch the show?
I did. I saw it. It was cute. I did not realize that you were just that disgustingly hairy.
I will find you. I will hunt you down and give you a high five just to be okay with everything on YouTube and such.
Like Sasquatch. I mean like.
What is that? Hold on, let me make that bigger. Show it again, Suni.
Show it again. It does look like Russo. Oh my gosh! Wow.
I respectfully disagree. You guys are great.
Hey, well, I guess we'll wait for. We're not going to wait for Casey. We're going to go ahead and get started because I want to introduce our guest.
Absolutely, let's go for it.
All right, guys. Well, welcome to this week's episode of Truth Will Set You Free. # Be the Change. Whatever you're watching on. If you are watching on Truth Will Set You Free, please make your way over to Be the Change because, as you know, we're only going to keep that live going for a little bit for all you stragglers that are over there because eventually we are not going to be making it live there. And we probably need to make that sooner rather than later because we've been saying that. So we need to follow up and
final week. This is the final week.
Final week, people.
Oh, executive decision made by Mr. Bigfoot over there.
Because you can't handle the mustache. It's all right.
It's the back hair I'm worried about. Jeez, you could have made a life-saving rope to escape prison with that back hair, man.
What color shirt are you wearing? Is that periwinkle? By the way, if you do like any of our clothing, go to awakenotwokestore.com and use Awake for 15% off. Moving on.
Man, leave it to the Jew to always be pushing something. Always.
Half Italian, half Jewish. Half Italian, half Jewish.
Yeah, I mean.
Drew, do you know what that means by being half Italian, half Jewish?
Mm-mm. Well, I mean, it means you got to hurry back, but.
That one correct, and it means that I tip well, but also hate to pay for parking. It's true.
Got it.
Anyways, guys, as you guys come into the live stream, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to share because that helps the algorithm. Let us know where you're watching from. I know we have a lot of new viewers tonight because Drew's here, so people are here to watch him, not us. We get it. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce Drew with a little bio that I took notes on here because he's got a lot of stuff, you guys. He lives I will say this, he lives a very humble existence on Instagram. You wouldn't know all this about him if you were just following him on Instagram. So I'm going to tell you, okay? Drew is a retired lieutenant with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. He was with them for 29 years. And as a matter of fact, he goes by the full name of Andrew Baxter, but on Instagram, he is Drew_Breezy, BREASY. And he started his career in the communication center as a 911 operator and dispatcher. And he calls those the first responders, which I thought was awesome. Drew has served as a detective, a supervisor in undercover narcotics, information handling, wiretaps, and more. What's great about him, if you follow him, you know he does his research, he digs into the details, he provides it without an emotional perspective, which I personally like because he's got no ties into the information that he's giving us. He's just saying, hey, here's the facts, you do with it what you want. He has covered cases such as Gabby Petito, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake, and now the Uvalde shooting at Robb Elementary is his newest coverage that he's doing. In addition to all of that, he also serves as the director of public affairs for Team South Florida, who's also in the chat. So give them a shout out. And they are a 501c3 nonprofit honoring fallen officers and helping to support their families. If you go to their website, everything is listed in our description box below. Their website is so cool. You guys can donate to them. They do amazing things for the families of fallen officers. There's a whole list on there. I was going to like list it off for you, but it's so much stuff. It's incredible. So please go check that out and check out Drew. So welcome, Drew.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate being here with every single one of you.
Well,
You're welcome.
Almost everyone, not you, Russo. He was lying.
Holy intro, Batman. Well, I'm glad everybody had a good show. We got to go for this evening.
Yeah.
I apologize. So.
Great to see you all. See you. Have a good night.
That's how you.
It's really nice.
Mike.
That's quite the resume that you. I'm. Sorry, I've got my own Mr. Drew driving by right now. No, so we're going to be talking a lot about the what's going on in Uvalde, and I'm actually interested to hear from you what you think can actually be done to kind of improve the very tense relationship that people have with law enforcement across this country right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go and officially start the show. We're going to bring Casey up as well, but let's go ahead and do the countdown if we're good with that. I think it's officially time for Truth Will Set You Free episode.
You know what, Anthony? We don't want to hear you talk anymore.
And we're back. As a reminder, guys, please share this episode out there. We are, again, I mean, this is as low as it typically gets for us. So please help us out. I don't know what bit of misinformation they think Truth Will Set You Free shared today, but we're a little low, so we need your help. Hit the likes, make as many comments as humanly possible, throw them up there. If you're on the Be the Change YouTube, if you want to be helpful, you want to help us out, let us know. Throw up something for the super chat. We're good to go. But Mo, kick the tires, light the fires. I can't wait for this one. This is going to be, by the way, my cheat sheet for talking with Officer Tatum tomorrow. So I'm going to be using all this.
Oh, you're interviewing him tomorrow?
Thank you for the setup, Mo. And of course, I know Suni, you've been talking with him for a long time. But yeah, I've got my interview for blunt force discussion with Officer Tatum tomorrow.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
That is dope.
I actually really, before we start getting into, what did you say, Suni?
Oh, he said thanks, Suni. I'm like, I don't have nothing to do with that.
Well, but you've been in communication with him for a long time. I know Mo has as well. So he knows who we are. He knows who I am, probably a little bit through Mo and through you. So I was just thanking you there, snack-a-doodle-doo. Just saying thanks.
Oh God.
Anyway, before we jump into Uvalde, I really like the question that Kevin asked. So Kevin, can you ask that question again? Because I'd love to hear the answer to that one.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I've really noticed is currently going on in America and is really leading to a lot of issues. There seems to be a really tense relationship right now in our society between law enforcement and the people in the community, right? There seems to be some kind of disconnect between those who are responsible for, protecting, quote unquote, protecting and serving the community and the communities they serve. There's a lot of communities that feel they're not being served, they're not being protected. Now, we know that's not always the case, but Drew, I'm very interested here. And first and foremost, do you think that tension is actually there? And if you do, what do you think can be done to alleviate or kind of start to rebuild this bridge between communities and those that are tasked with protecting them?
Yeah, I think there's no greater example of the tension in the community than the exodus that's occurring in law enforcement right now, of which I'm part of. In 2021, I opted to retire from law enforcement. I was in a deferred retirement program, so I was just kind of making money doing what I was doing. I wasn't doing any heavy lifting, but I'm telling you, the burdens of societal pressure and then the societal pressure put on administrations is having a trickle-down effect on the officers, and here I am in the middle. So You're staring at 30 sets of eyes in a roll call room who just want to hear you say, hey, just go out there and do your job. We got your back. But you're not really able to say that. You're not, it's 2020, then 2021. You're not really able to say that. Now, we were in the era of George Floyd and COVID. So, things were kind of a mess at the time, but to establish legitimacy in the community, which is necessary for all law enforcement agencies, I think we have to reestablish leadership in law enforcement. I think that the exodus that you're seeing is of people that are nearing retirement, and they have enough time in the books, or they're financially set enough to just say, look, I don't have to put up with this. Like, if you're going to put me under a microscope for every single thing I do, it's not about just being accountable. Accountability is, listen, you're not going to find a more self-reflective group than law enforcement officers. I know that may be hard to believe for some, but that's true. But we're our own worst critics at times, but generally, when people who don't understand what we do or why we do it, when they become hypercritical of what we do, and then the administration starts to get nervous because they feel like they're losing legitimacy in the community, they take like right turn actions, as in, okay, well, we just need to fire this guy. We need to throw out the baby with the bathwater on this girl over here. And we're losing good cops and good leaders and good supervisors based on pressures that may not necessarily be warranted. Accountability, 100% all day long. Over accountability or way too much pressure, I think it's starting to have its effects on the crime rate in the United States.
Can you answer this question for us, Drew? And I mean, I could, of course. I think any of us can. But what exactly, when you...
Can you ask the question, Russo, or?
No, he can't.
Oh, bye, Tony.
He froze.
Yeah,
Sorry.
all in all, he just is curious what your perspective is with this question.
Yeah. Because real quick, adding on top, because when you say, you're under a microscope all the time, there are plenty of people within the communities that would say that the microscope hasn't been focused enough. There hasn't been enough observation, enough pressure put on police officers across this country. There's something to be said. A lot of sheriffs are very good because they're elected, but in a lot of localized city police departments, there's a much different dichotomy between the people. So when you say that there's too much pressure, do you think there's any validity to the people thinking that maybe there hasn't been enough?
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing: sometimes it's misdirected or sometimes it's mischaracterized. So, when Mike Brown happened, for example, it just became the narrative of shooting unarmed black men. But it's not that's not what the statistics support, and it's you can't just callously go through life depending on statistics, but that's what you're up against. I mean, really. So how is it for a law enforcement, particularly me, a middle-aged white guy, how is it easy for me to just stand up and tap a microphone and say, hey, we tend to shoot everybody. We don't just shoot unarmed black guys. Like, we're never going to be able to say that with and still be legitimate in the community. So yeah, I understand the microscope, and I understand the need for transparency. And yes, we do need to change the way we're doing business in law enforcement. The whole point of law enforcement is to restore order, or it's just to protect from the absence of order. And we should never let our authority overshadow our service. It's our service to the community. However, there is a fine line where the community has to understand that we're the professionals, and I understand that it's a leap of faith that you're going to have to trust us that we're doing what we can legitimately and not hyper-focusing on any type of community or any type of neighborhood or race or sex. You're going to have to take that leap of faith. But by the same token, I'm saying the same communities are taking the leap of faith of what the media is telling them. So it seems that the benefit of the doubt is given to the media because that's what they're given, and social media is a beast in and of itself. So I'm all for transparency. I'm all for the legitimacy. In fact, my whole mantra is, you know how you establish a legitimacy? You just tell the truth. You never have to remember the story if you're just telling the truth. The problem is sometimes in a litigious society, the chiefs or the administrators can't get up and give full details of an officer-involved shooting because there's a lawsuit coming.
Mm-hmm. So you know what's interesting is I was watching this week the meeting that the Uvalde School District had with the parents, and that was a really, really heated. I think it was like almost 2 hours of these parents getting up there, and they were, giving the superintendent, all the feelings and all the questions and all this other stuff, and he was just having to sit there and take it as he should. But as I sat there, I couldn't help but think, this is such a good moment to be witnessing, right? Because I hope that this small town is an example for people, that when you sit here and look at people like me and Suni and Kevin and Casey, and we're all talking about politics and talking about elections and talking about local officials and all this other stuff, and people are like, oh, who cares about politics? I don't really care about that. This is such a great example of why you should care. Because I think these parents are now seeing that these officials that they have just allowed to be sitting there, no accountability, now they're starting to look into these funds that they've received for security, and what did you do with it? We want to see receipts, right? Those are things that you should be doing on a regular basis. Like, don't wait for a tragedy to occur in your town or at your school to start asking these questions. So I'm the type of person that I always like to look at things as positively as I can. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is going to hopefully shed some light on that, because these parents are no fools. While the rest of the world is talking about the police, which I truly believe the police need to have accountability for what they did or did not do from the moment they arrived there, right? These parents are asking questions of the school, like the locks, security, processes, money. Were substitute teachers given keys, things like that. What do you think about that? What is your thoughts?
They were given grant money for the upgrade of security a couple of years back, and you know what they spent the money on? A majority of the money, according to the findings in that Texas House of Representatives interim report, they spent it on cameras. So. I understand cameras are necessary, but what cameras do, they do exactly what they're doing right now. They tell the story. They tell a fraction of the story after the fact, right? So cameras might be good for auto burglaries or for thefts, and in this case, as an active shooter, we got to see the fisheye lens from the hallway there, but. What was really done to fortify the schools? The schools are old. Like some of the officers went to Robb Elementary. Like, the schools are aged, and for their age, they're probably not in compliance with current security measures. I mean, we saw that with the locks in the door. That is a totally different story, but. What can be done to fortify the school a little bit more? I mean, that's where the security money should go. And by the way, Uvalde has a police department, and the Uvalde Consolidated Instructional School District has a police department, and it's headed by Chief Arredondo. That's the guy who everybody is hanging the blame on. And these aren't excuses; these are facts. Chief Arredondo took command of the CISD when it was formed in 2018. So we're only talking about 3 or maybe 4 years that law enforcement agency has been in existence. There's 6 officers assigned to 9 schools. Robb Elementary is one of 2 elementary schools. There's a couple of middle schools and a high school and other things. So you have 6 officers for 9 schools. Now, when I say 6 officers, Chief Arredondo is one of the 6. He has a detective, so there's 2 of your 6. He has a chief, a deputy chief, so there's 3 of your 6. So when it comes down to it, you got 3 line officers, and then you have 3 people to run the administration of that department, and there's 9 schools between them. So so maybe some of the money could have gone there.
Well,
I do think that that's poignant
oh,
that they should be taking those questions and answering where that money went.
yeah. So what I have here is a survey that was just released by the Trafalgar Group a couple days ago. And the first question it asks is, how confident are you that your local law enforcement and government officials could identify and stop a violent person before they started a mass shooting? 38% about said confident in any way. 62% said not confident at all. Protection during a mass shooting. What do you believe would protect you and your family in the event of a mass shooting? Armed citizens outdid both federal agents and local police. Armed citizens. And the reason why I believe that is, if you watch what happened in Uvalde, it was a reflection of what's been going on. Now, we can say that, cops don't want to, the Ferguson effect. We can talk about how cops have, there's so much pressure on cops they can't even do their jobs anymore and all these other things. But what it comes down to is, how did we even get to that point to begin with? Like, what was going on? Why is it that I can be told by people most cops are good? And then at the same time, you will hear plenty of stories out of major police departments across this country. We can't report bad cops because it's a fraternity. And if we report someone, we'll be ostracized. We'll be kicked out. If you're going to try to tell me 98% of cops are good and only 2% are bad, why is it that you're afraid to stand up and speak out against the bad cops? They make it worse for everybody. Why is it that is a continuous pattern that that you see across the board? If it was only 2%, or if it was only 3%, what percentage does it have to be before other cops are afraid to speak out against the bad ones? 10%, 15%. And it's that problem right there that has led to so much of this tension that is going on. That is why people are watching what happened to Uvalde with cops just meandering about, going over to hand sanitizer dispensers. Like, you had 490 law enforcement officials on the scene pretty quickly. The man whose wife was in that room was held back. I watched the video of them holding him back today. He would have gone into that room. I know Marines would have gone into that room. I know plenty of soldiers. We would have died for that. The whole siege of Mosul was that. Over and over and over and over and over again. So
everybody would have gone into that room. Everybody would have gone into that room in hindsight. But
in hindsight, it should have. But why wasn't it that case in the exact moment? Why is it that when you hear children screaming, the response is not, I am getting my ass in that room even if it gets me shot. And the person behind me will do the same. And the person behind, as many of us will die as necessary to take out that bad guy. That is the problem that I have. It's a failure of leadership. You're right. It's a failure of training. You're right. But I think saying that maybe, the cops are under too much pressure, or there's too much accountability, or they're too worried about this, and that, then, well, how do we fix that? Because that's not right. That's not good. And those people should be ashamed and embarrassed at their performance. Okay, that's what I'm sorry.
I know, but this is the exact scrutiny that I'm talking about. They're being over scrutinized by people who don't understand exactly what we do. So you're making all of these assertions saying that this is what happened and this is how it happened and this is that, but you don't know. For instance, you don't know that they were in this whole posture of, how you wait out, how time is on your side when you have
as a veteran, I know how to do a 5-man stack on a room and breach the room and get in there and kill people. Right? I know my roommate does too.
Okay, so let me ask you, Kevin. How do you breach a room that is locked, that the door opens out? How do you know?
It wasn't though.
Do you know that? Is the question.
Because they brought the door that was there, right? And if you need to breach it, you can breach those doors. Like,
Kevin, tell me how you know that door was locked. Because I'll tell you what, in the House of Representatives interim report, it specifically tells you that door was painted. It was never reported to the facilities people, who are understaffed anyway. Everyone knew that room 111 had issues with the door lock. Everyone knew that. Students, teachers, substitute teachers. And nobody tried the door. That's widely known, right? Nobody tried the door. They assumed that the shooter made it in that room. That's exactly how he got in there. I guarantee it. But nobody can say that he didn't pull the door behind him, one. And the only other people that would know that would be the people that breached the door, and they had to use a key. So before Bortak made their entry,
everybody knew the door was broken. No one said, "Hey, that door doesn't work. Get in there." Like,
but do you think that information? Do you think that information gets to cops while they're getting bullets shot at them? I mean, realistically,
they weren't getting any bullets shot at. Not a single one of them had a bullet shot at them until they got in the room. This is the problem I have. Is like this is excuse making.
No, Kevin.
The problem I have is, Kevin, you're talking out of school, and you're asserting, you're saying that you are telling the truth about this whole thing, but you don't know the whole truth about the whole thing.
Well, here we can watch the video together.
They did.
No.
They did take fire though, Kevin, at the very beginning.
Okay, return fire and move.
That's why they retreated. They didn't want to hang out in front of a door while they were taking bullets through the drywall. They couldn't get in the door, Kevin. That's the point.
That's
no. They could have. They just didn't want to risk their lives to do so. That's the problem.
Let's let take a second.
And on top of that, their job, Uvalde PD's job, CISD's PD's job, is to go around and jiggle doors all day, every day. And they did that all day, every day at every school they went to. And anytime a door was unlocked, they talked to the teacher about it. So
that was in the hearing. That was in the reporting.
It's in the hearing. It's in the report. So is it like what I'm saying is, in hindsight, it is so easy to say, well, they should have just tried the door. No, actually, the information that they had was that the door was locked. You don't know if the door was locked or unlocked, and they used the key to get into it.
But if they had tried the door, they'd have noticed it was unlocked.
If
we have a video, so Suni, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in front of you, but we have a video showing how the whole thing transpired. It's an hour and 22 minutes. You have the beginning, which I agree with, is do we know they tried it? Yeah, you can make arguments both ways, so I'm going to just let that go, right? But going into, at around 55, 57 minutes, they were able to get into that room.
With a key.
And so why did it take that many minutes to get into that room when it was only literally seconds to penetrate that room? Why?
Great. That's one of the failures that occurred. That's the command and control failure.
But you're saying they tested the door and all of these things. If they did that at 12 minutes, they could have saved 3 lives. True or not true?
They might have lost one of theirs.
I can't say that. There's no way I could say that. There's no way.
But it's logical to think that. Out of the 19 that were there, right? Thinking 3 is possible to be saved is logical to say that.
Yeah.
True or not true?
Untrue. I don't even know what you're saying, to be honest.
Yeah, well, so this is what we're getting at. This is why there's a tension. Sorry, Suni. Sorry.
Suni, go ahead. Sorry, I jumped in front of you. That's my fault. We can't hear you.
Here's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
All of us have collectively watched videos, listened to press conferences. I've slaved reading these documents, right? And a person does not have to be a police officer to have a common sense opinion on what went right and what went wrong. I've heard you reference that several times. Well, people just don't know because they're not cops. We watched 3 initial cops go in. We watched 1 stay engaged. We watched the other 3 hide behind him. We did. There was only 1 guy. There was 1 guy who kept
he didn't stay engaged.
Can I finish?
I'm sorry.
No,
Did he stay engaged?
I haven't interrupted anybody. There was 1 officer who repeatedly engaged by himself at that, trying to get other people to come up behind him to possibly get through the door. Why is it's on film? What is hard with saying They just didn't show up that day. We're talking about doors. We're talking about the stress that police are under. Dude, we ridicule politicians, everyone like this. Athletes. You don't hear LeBron James coming on TV saying this. It's just too tough for me. I can't take this. You
No,
are a
never.
police officer.
No, you
This
never
is-
see LeBron James cry
this
on
is-
national TV. Never.
We ridicule LeBron all the time. Don't be disingenuous.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but yeah,
Tell him to shut up and dribble the ball. Come on now.
yeah, he was carried off the court, right? So it's LeBron James. It's
Okay,
stupid.
well,
I have a question for Drew. And sorry, I have no idea what happened, but my computer is pretty much dead. But what I'm going to ask you is, are you still saying there was big mistakes made by the police? Are you not?
1,000%.
Yeah.
It's logical.
And there's so many mistakes made, but at the same time, I think and this is again something that I have to look at. I don't think you have said the police were perfect. I don't think Tatum has said the police are perfect. I think that
Never.
we are deciding whether or not it's cowardice or whether it was a complete and utter failure of communication and discussion between leadership. I think cowardice is very different than a failure to do your job.
Well,
Yes.
I have a question. Why can't it be encompassing of all that?
Yeah.
Why is it that
It is.
the immediate response is cops just can't be cowards? Like,
Mhm.
what kind of thought pattern is that?
I never
That's-
said cops. I never said cops can't.
But you know what?
I'm speaking in
But-
general. We can't call them cowards. Why fucking not? They're human just like we are. Why
I
not?
never
But
said we
I-
couldn't
but I
call them
think-
cowards. I'm saying,
But I
this
think
case,
to say every single one of those people there were cowards is a little
That's not
much.
realistic. We're talking about the ones that were there and chose not to engage that day. We're talking about the 3 initial cops
And
that
see-
showed up, and only one had heart to keep trying to re-engage the suspect. I watched
Sue.
it. Everybody watched it.
this video
Yeah.
that I showed was the very first entrance of the cops. There's 6 of them.
Okay,
three,
so
six.
and that
And
that
they're running.
doesn't
Oh,
lend-
here's
it
the
doesn't
best
lend
part.
to
Here's them
comment.
running away.
Hold on, guys.
Right.
Hold on. Let Drew talk
It
because Drew's our
doesn't-
guest. So let's hear what he has to say.
it doesn't lend to your common sense that they don't want to hang out in front of a door where they're taking bullets and they can't get in. It doesn't. That doesn't ring a bell with anybody.
No,
Like,
let me explain
So
to you.
how about this?
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's not reasonable to you, and it's not reasonable to SUNY, and it's not reasonable to UKC, and it's not reasonable. So why do you think it's reasonable to these guys that have done that for however many years they've done it? Why do you think? And it's not reasonable to me. Why do you think it's not reasonable? Do you think that there is a flight or fight response? But I'm seeing a guy run towards bullets. I'm seeing 3 guys run towards bullets.
We know you're about
Then-
to see him run away. Yep, there they go.
Okay. All right.
Can you keep
So did you want them to hang out in front? Did you want them to hang out in front of a locked
No.
door while they were taking
No.
shrapnel?
No,
No, and I believe what you're making right now is a straw man argument because no one said we wanted them to sit in front of the door.
Yeah.
That's not what was said. And I expect my police officers that I pay with my tax dollars to do their fucking job.
SUNY, I got a question. I've got a question for you directly, SUNY. Are we assuming that those police officers knew that there were kids in that classroom?
yes.
What?
There's no
Tell
assuming.
me,
It was
How?
said, and we outlined it last week. It was
He asked me
said.
a question. He asked
We
me a
knew
question.
that.
He asked me a
Go
question.
ahead.
Why wouldn't you assume that there are children, there aren't kids in a school when it's still a school day? Like, who wouldn't take the stretch to say, wow?
I can tell you why, because I've continued to watch videos, and I was on the same side as you, SUNY. I was on the same side as you, and then I've started to watch videos. There was one chunky police officer that you hear breathing extremely heavy that was on the other side of this main video. And this is where I started to make the change. He was the first one that was in contact with dispatch and making the radio call. He said that he didn't even know what side of the building he was on. He goes, "We have a barricaded subject. It is in an office part of the building," which I don't know what idiot thinks that that's not a classroom. And on top of it, there was an assembly going on. So most students were being cleared out on the other side of the school, thinking that they were all part of this assembly. So there is a logical thought process that these people, led by one idiot on a radio, have had misinformation, and it is just a barricaded subject shooting. So at that point, you would actually go, I see you, Suni. At one point, you would go, all right, now we have to treat this as some crazy guy in the side of this room and figure it out. Again,
the children's screams were edited out. The
So-
screams were edited out. This video doesn't have them screaming.
That's not
for
true.
us.
The children's
The
screams
children's
were before
screams
they
were
got
edited
there.
out of the videos for the families.
Hey.
They weren't edited out of the cops when the cops were in there. There were no children screaming when the cops were in there.
Yes,
It's
they
in
were
the House of
killed by
Representatives
then.
Report.
But nobody
What?
knew
Listen.
that, Kevin.
Hold
all right.
on. You guys, stop for a
Go ahead,
second.
Mel.
Jeez. First of all, can I just remind you all that Drew is not the
Thank you.
police that went down the hallway? Let's
No, you're
not
not,
attack
Drew.
our guests.
Drew,
Like,
I
let's
want to
not
say
attack-
thank you from the bottom of our heart. You are in a bad position right now. You are in a very precarious position. Our anger is not at
Take it all
you.
day long. I will
Well,
take
in
Sorry,
all
it
we're not
reality,
at you.
it is 3 on
Yeah.
3 technically, so it's fine.
So-
Suni's had her hand raised.
Well, let me just finish saying this really quick. So, I obviously am never going to post this because it's terrifying to hear. But I have equipment to enhance audio, and I enhanced the audio of when the shooter went into the classroom, okay, and fired off the first shots. And you hear a blood-curdling scream, and then silence, and then shooting, and then more screams. So they did not remove the audio, they lowered it, okay? I was able to pick it up. After the 100 so or whatever rounds that he expelled the very first time he went in there before the police got there was silence, you guys. There was nothing. The police went down that hallway and there was nothing. And I can understand. Just imagine, even if you were a child in that classroom and you had just witnessed that, would you make a peep? I wouldn't. Make a peep. I can understand that. Now hold on just a second. Drew, I want to know, because you used to work in a 911 call center. And the big thing is, okay, these 911 operators were on the phone with this teacher and you could hear her say, get back in your classrooms, get back in your classrooms. Explain how the disconnect happened between the 911 operators and police.
It depends on where the 911 call came in to begin with. It routes, there's equipment, there's technological equipment on each cell phone tower that's going to route a 911 call to the proper agency. And I don't know how they do it in Uvalde or how they do it with Uvalde CISD, but I can tell you this. If you look at any after action report, whether it be Uvalde, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Virginia Tech, any of these incidents, the first thing to go is the communications, because 911 gets overwhelmed just like that. If Uvalde CISD had one operator on duty, he or she was overwhelmed from the get-go. If they're trying to relay information over the radio, the radios don't work inside the building. That's a little tough to do. But even if Uvalde PD, let's say, just for the sake of argument, Uvalde PD had 3 911 operators. And I'm telling you, I worked in a large agency, 3,500 people, and on duty at any time we had maybe 9, 10 911 operators. So this is a complete stretch saying that Uvalde PD had 3. I'm telling you right now that they're overwhelmed with 911 calls from, well, first of all, there was a 911 call from a lady who was shot in the face, the kid's grandmother. There was a 911 call for the crash that occurred in the culvert. There was a 911 call from the funeral home because the guy was shooting at them. Then there was an additional 911 call from the teacher that probably saved hundreds of lives that we don't talk enough about, in my opinion. And then so that's just 4 911 calls that I know of. Okay,
this
so
is
then
the problem.
What
This picture here is of the man whose wife was the teacher in this room and had told him there were still children alive. He is checking his phone, waiting for updates from his wife, who is in the room and has told them there are children alive. That is the problem I have with this. And they stopped this man from going into that room. They restrained him physically to keep him out of the room. That
Did
is
you
like,
see when the police went down the hallway and he posted up by the wall? He looked like he was in shock. The guy didn't even flinch when the other
but
officers took shots.
the excuse they didn't know there
reasonable
were still children alive is gone.
You don't.
This is
no,
the reasonableness test.
We have to remember the timeline. We have to remember the timeline, right? We know if you look at the timeline, the kids were alive for almost. There was one kid making a 911 phone call inside that classroom for about 45 minutes.
Yes.
45 minutes. I don't care.
He made a phone call 45
care.
minutes into it.
Who was
Yeah.
he? It was a girl. It was a female.
45 minutes.
It was 45 minutes later.
So, Drew, why do you?
That kid was still alive making that phone call. And I don't care. Like, I understand what everybody's saying here, but the part that we have to look at here, if you changed and saved one kid's life by kicking in that door in the speed that was done, what is wrong with that? And you risk your life because that is your duty and your service to the community. Why wasn't that done 30 plus minutes ago and you could have saved more potentially? Because
kicking in the door is not feasible. Kicking in the door is
but they did it. But they did it 50 minutes later.
No, they opened the door
with a key.
They opened it with a key.
Door in. And you know what they did right before
the door was supposedly not locked, right?
You
don't know that.
And on top
they
of that,
didn't know that because they never checked.
On top of that, well, I know in hindsight you would have done it, but on top of that, you know what they did? You know what that same BORTAC team did? The BORTAC team took a Halligan tool when they got there. Not a key. They took a Halligan tool. They went to an adjacent door, and they tried to open it, and they said, this takes too long. We can't do it. We need a key.
I've got it
they
right now.
They waited for a key, and they went in.
Right now, what you're doing, what's going on right now is exactly why there's a problem in this country with the law enforcement and the people. Because what you're doing right now is you are protecting the fraternal order of cops. You are choosing the cops. They fucked up. They were wrong. They were cowards. They did not.
I will listen.
No. Hey. But this right here, right? This is how it is the case that people can say. This is how it is the case that people can say 99% of cops are good, but I can't go against the 1% that are bad.
I really want to hear from Suni, but I don't understand how you're hearing that from Drew. He's talking
about because he won't just say these cops did not do what they were supposed to do.
No, he did. He literally said,
"Can you chill out, Kevin? Chill out.
Explain how.
Chill out.
How can a wife kiss her husband on the lips every morning, knowing that he might die today? Because that's the line of duty he's chosen for his life. That was always the call of the cops. You're choosing every day to risk your life for your community. Well, what member of your community is worth it if it's not school children locked in a fucking classroom?
Because at what point do you say, you're literally...
Do you really think that cops think that they... Do you really think that those fucking cops stood in the hallway?
Drew, I'm going to go ahead and engage with Kevin.
Are you out of your mind?
Drew,
do I have to go to the part where they're running down the hallway?
Mute Kevin.
Drew, I'm gonna go ahead and have this conversation for you.
Yeah,
Kevin, you are continuing to bring up the logical fallacy that you are playing Monday morning quarterback, thinking that you know every schematic of every bit of
every schematic. No, what I'm saying is, what are you supposed to put your life on the life for, if not children? The reason why they didn't go into that room is because there was a possibility 1, 2 might die. The third one is going to kill them. I promise
Kevin,
you.
I've never seen you go off the thought process rails like this. No.
Okay,
offense.
so let me explain. So when you stack up on a door, you usually stack up about 5 deep. The first person goes in the room, they're going one direction. Next person goes in the room,
how do you get
they're going another direction.
Kevin, let him talk. Let him talk.
No,
you've asked several questions.
You're being Captain Obvious. How do you get in the room? If you can't get in the room and
you've already said yourself,
how do you do it?
So do I need to describe getting down low and reaching up and trying the doorknob?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Right, guys, this is unlocked. All right, get a flashbang. Somebody grab the flashbang. Let's breach. Bam, done. 5 minutes
Man,
in.
I wish you were there.
Yes, maybe if I was there would have been leadership on the scene that had got them in the room.
Cops.
Maybe if I was there would have been balls to have. The problem, you mentioned it earlier, there's a problem with leadership. And leadership gets you in that room.
The problem is with the citizens
Right.
who don't listen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
don't
leadership
want to hear it because
was
you
the
have
problem.
military experience.
I want to hear Suni. Can we go to Suni? And Kevin, I need you to take a time out and take a deep breath because you've started to change subjects in the middle of a subject. So Suni, go ahead.
The only subject I mentioned was that it's cowardice for men to not try to save children.
Well, again, we still don't know
God.
that they knew that there was kids in there.
Okay, you guys, as a general rule, let's let our guests actually answer some of the questions we're hailing at him right now.
Suni, go ahead.
Suni.
I just want to know, like, when is it logical to make assumptions without having any real proof behind the assumption you're making?
Great question.
Well, it is a great question. But I can ask the same question, right? Or no?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, finish.
Yeah, go ahead. Suni, you got to have a conversation. Normal.
Huh?
Just if you're like he's just responding to you. It's not like he's interrupting you.
Okay. I just want to know why we're lending a ton of excuses to police officers. Bottom line. Like, we keep saying, well, they didn't know they were kids. Wouldn't a smart person with 2 brain cells to rub together say there could be kids in here? Well, they're assuming that the door was locked. Well, they also never checked it. It's like we're accepting all these assumptions that we wouldn't accept in any other scenario. I don't understand why it's being accepted here as a valid excuse to not perform your job.
I explained it thoroughly why it could have been why it could go the other way about 10 minutes ago. I explained it exactly why. One bad report by one police officer, the fact there was 500 kids exiting the building on the other side. And I'm not going to say there wasn't utter and complete incompetence in leadership and in the communication, and it led to 21 dead people, and it's awful. But to presume, you literally said it yourself. How can we assume something? There is not a single bit of footage in that hour and whatever minutes until that call came in, and at that point they mobilized. Once they figured it took the 6 minutes it took for them to mobilize took too long.
That's not true. They found out at 12:07. They didn't kill this kid till 12:52. That call came in at 12:03. It's on every single timeline that we all have, and we're still giving them the excuse of they didn't know. That's not true.
How did that one police officer not one time start communicating it to the others? I'm fine with him being guilty of murder. I don't give a shit. Like,
what does our guest think?
Yeah, that's actually a very valid and good question. What do you think about the fact that nobody started to spread the word? And this is an actual concrete question. If that call came in, and I know they started to mobilize and ask if there was kids in there at about 6 minutes after, what was the thought process? Not knowing, how did they not all know there was children in that classroom at that time?
Bad assumptions. I mean, part of it is that they came in and looked in other classrooms and saw they were empty. In an active shooter protocol, the lights go down, the blinds get closed. You're not looking in, but at any rate, I get it. It's a bad assumption that there are no kids in the classroom. But how are you going to get into the classroom, whether there's kids in there or not? Now, personally, I'll run through the wall like the Kool-Aid man if I know there are kids in there. And if you remember, Colonel McCraw said at the hearing initially, his mic was not as prominent as it was for other testimony, but he specifically said, I have no doubt in my mind, I have the quote written somewhere, I have no doubt in my mind that if those officers knew that there were kids in that room, that they would have gone in and given their lives. There's no question about it. But no one gives deference to that. Nobody cares about it. Because
so
what do you mean they knew?
They knew! The husband of the woman who was in the classroom with them was giving them updates on the children until she died.
Giving who updates?
Knew.
Giving who updates?
So let me read
standing
to
in
you.
the hallway. Her husband.
let me read to you straight from the interim report. Okay, it says, after the attacker fired on the initial responders, Chief Arredondo noticed the light on in room 110, the room immediately south of room 111, which was used by Miss Martinez, who had taken her class out of the building early for recess. Chief Arredondo wondered if there could be a threat in room 110. The door was either opened or unlocked. He entered to clear the room, and he saw holes in the wall. The room was vacant. He told the committee he thought, there's no babies in here. It's awards day. He testified that he prayed that if room 110 was empty, the children might be gone from the room occupied by the attacker as well. Although the encounter had begun as an active shooter scenario, Chief Arredondo testified that he immediately began to think of the attacker as being cornered and the situation as being one of a barricaded subject, where his priority was to protect people in the other classrooms from being victimized by the attacker. With the benefit of hindsight, we now know it was a terrible and tragic mistake, he said.
What's happening in this video? Who are they holding back?
They're holding back the guy who would be completely irrational because his.
Why are they holding him back? Why is he trying to get into that room so bad?
That's a very common thing.
Why is he trying to get in the room? That's all I want to know. Why is he trying to get in the room so bad?
Kevin, let me calm you down. Just
he knows his wife and those children are still alive. He wouldn't be trying.
What room was his wife in? Was she in 111, 112?
This room right here. This is the room his wife was in.
How do you know that?
Because his wife was telling him. She called him.
Right. Was she in 109, 111, or 112?
This room right here.
No, tell me, Kevin, where his wife was.
I don't know the room numbers. I just know this is where the shooter was and this is where his wife was.
Hang on for a second. Both of you, please. Kevin, yes. I agree with you. I'm on the same page with you and a lot of perspectives, but I will tell you, this video is on the wrong door. This is not the door where
he's at the wrong door. All he knows is his wife is behind a door, alive, dying with kids.
Hang on, I'm getting there.
Not with kids. We don't know that there were kids in the room with
Drew, you are incorrect, and I'll show you that, and I can show you the video. Okay. Behind this door, they remove one child from this room a little bit later, and they had to coerce her to come out because they were scared of a threat. And if you need me to share that, I will do that. Okay. Because I went through I analyzed the whole video last week. See this door? Everything on that door matches exactly what Kevin was talking about. So Kevin's
because they're restraining. Okay, so he wasn't in that door I'm pointing. He was trying to get down the hall to his wife where he knew she was still alive but dying with other children because they knew children were still alive.
How do you know they knew that?
I'm trying to. I'm providing.
Why is it so hard to admit that the cops?
Let him finish. No. Can you let him finish?
I'm backing up both of your stories, is what I'm doing. And yes, Kevin, I am more on your side. There's nothing wrong to say there were mistakes made. There is nothing wrong with that at all. But if we look at this video, we're going to get close. All of a sudden, you'll see a guy trying to knock on the door. What video? I got the notes. Hang on. I'll speed this up for everybody. Hang on 2 seconds. 31:18 is my notes. Sorry, I sped along.
So they're
31:18. We
so
see they're trying to get her. They're trying to get her to open the door. She doesn't open the door. The master chief, which is the one in the flannel and the vest, all of that comes up to the door, starts yelling and telling her, "Hey, you're safe. You're safe. You're safe." I assume. I don't know for sure. But hey, open the door. And we're going to get back to 31:12. Here's where you see the flannel, like I mentioned. This person, they're going to open the door. The girl opens the door. Here we go. So that girl comes out and runs. They go and clear the room. They clear the room in under a minute. We know children are still alive and in the freaking school. We have not cleared the school, and we know where all.
They were evacuating children the entire time.
Drew, hang on. let me finish. We know there are children potentially in every room, and we didn't clear that before we take out the threat. So when we talk about this, I understand what you're saying when it comes to you got to make sure you do things tactically, right? But this room was not even, there was no one even knocking on this door for 30 something minutes to try to get that child out. And they
So
were
you mean
not
no
even
one was screaming in there?
Drew, hang on. Let me finish. No one even tried to check that room to see if it was clear beforehand. Why are they right here at the door looking down the hallway if that was the case? And go ahead. I that's my big thing. No one even checked to see if that was clear.
Why can't we just say these aren't the cops that they're supposed to be, that they are not being trained, they are not being led, they do not represent what law enforcement is supposed to be, the sacrifice that's supposed to be made for the communities, and is representative of a greater problem between our communities and law enforcement today?
I don't think Drew's not saying that that's all not true. I think what he's saying is there's a lot of, we don't know why they did this, that, and the other, because that's why there's still an investigation. Okay. There's still an investigation.
Okay.
I will never say, because I haven't been in that situation, so I cannot, even though on a video, to me, if I was just looking at a video and you asked me, hey, what do you think about this situation? I'd be like, those people look like cowards. However, because I have great respect for people who put their life on the line, like police or military, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what it feels like to be at a door, trying to open the door, all these things going to, I don't know. Now, do you sign up for that? Some people might say, yeah. Do you sign up to be killed? Some people might say no. I don't know that. I think that's why we brought Drew on, to give that perspective, because the one thing none of us have any experience, sorry, I have something in my eye. None of us have any experience in is being in that position. You know what I mean? So I would love for Drew, I would love for Drew to actually get a second to talk without being interrupted, so he can answer all the questions that have been thrown his way.
I apologize.
And Drew, I wasn't personally making a, just to be clear, I nothing's personal, by the way. I'm just pointing out things that it just doesn't make sense to me, but feel free, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sue.
What do you guys say, and you can answer this, Drew, about all the former police force, the former law enforcement, all the military speaking out of this just being effing horrendous and there's no excuse behind it? What do you say to those people? They have the same amount of experience you have, and they are singing a completely different tune than you are.
They have the same amount of experience, but they're not thinking it through. They're not taking into account that they didn't have the information that they had. Kevin doesn't have the information that they had. I don't have the information that they had. None of these cops have the information that they had. And in fact, I specifically say, if you're a cop and you're willing to throw these guys under the bus without full facts and knowing exactly what they knew, you're a turncoat. You're part of the problem, and you're another part of the reason that people are fleeing law enforcement, because guys like Kevin, people like you, people like the cops who don't have the full information are going off of what CNN says, what Facebook tells them to say, what Twitter shows. And by the way, they never believe them for the other stuff, but for some reason, they're going to believe them on this. Listen, when this whole thing started, the cops stood outside and just arrested people while babies got murdered. Then that narrative was blown out of the water. Then what was the next thing? Oh, the lady jumped the fence and she's the one that saved kids. Then that narrative was blown out of the water. Then the guy with the shotgun left the barbershop with his cape on and grabbed a barbershop out of the umbrella stand, and he kicked in the door and he took the shooter out, by God, because these guys were cowards. Then that narrative was blown out of the water. The problem is everybody wants to engage in this right fight, and they want to be right. And they want to say, this is what happened, they were cowards. But every time their argument gets blown out of the water, the microscope goes a little bit deeper, and the facts have not come out fully yet. I don't care what an edited video says. The video makes you believe that they edited out screams because cops were standing in a hallway listening to kids scream. That's not true. There were gunshots when those cops made it in the hallway. There were no screams. They did not know there were kids in that room. They couldn't get to the threat if they wanted to.
So then here's my response to that. You say you're speaking in absolutes by saying they did not know. We are giving another side saying, yes, they did know, and we provided proof. You said you can't say that because you don't have all the
provided proof. I'm going off of their testimony. You haven't provided proof. No, the video is not proof. The video is video.
So a video with a police officer hearing on a radio that a child is calling in is not proof that they know.
Are you talking about the CNN video where the outside, where the guy outside got the information?
Fox News
there was
played
plenty
that
of information.
And
how long after that did they make the entry?
Video. That's fine, but Fox News played the same video. Don't do the CNN.
Fair enough.
Don't do that.
Fair
there's proof that they knew. And then you also said, I want to respond to a few things you said. You said any law enforcement or military who has a criticism of these people are turncoats.
No. Not criticism. I was specifically asked a question. What do you say about these people who have all this experience, and you're the only one swimming upstream is basically what you were saying. And I'm saying they're turncoats.
Yours. I'm not saying you're the only one, because you're not.
Okay. All right. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not trying to be specific. If you want to be specific, we'll be specific. But all I'm saying is there is plenty of information. The information keeps coming out, even like, and it doesn't seem odd to you that it was released on a Sunday, but the information keeps coming out. Like new information keeps coming out. The executive summary of the exact House of Representatives document that I'm talking about specifically says this investigation is not over. We don't have access to most of the witnesses. We don't have access to the medical examiner reports, so we don't know when people died or how they died. It's not over yet. But everybody is saying, well, the video, which is one angle, and it doesn't take into account this, and it's got an overlay of text for that, that's definitive. And you know, because Instagram has programmed all of society to look at this video and say, yep, there's my proof.
No, these arguments you're making are disingenuous. Everyone here understands the information. I know when a video is edited, when it's capped, when I'm being lied to. This was a video this very same video was shared amongst every news group out there, every news station.
The news.
Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a citizen and I'm listening to you talk. And this would create so much mistrust for me. Everything I'm saying to you is either you don't understand or you're speaking from this lens. People don't know how to listen.
You are dying for the police to be wrong. No one has ever said that there weren't mistakes made. You are dying for the police to be wrong.
I'm dying for people to be held accountable. I'm pro cops. I don't know what you're talking about.
So why are you so afraid for the cops to take their slice of accountability? There's a big stew of accountability. Why in the poison ingredients that the cops put into this stew, they should be held accountable for. But it's not what you say, it's what the facts say. It's not what you feel.
Are we not all reading the same damn? We're reading the same report.
No, you're not. You're making your judgments now, Suni. You're not.
Dude, I'm looking at the report.
So this is what but
the report is only preliminary. They're still doing
we're all still sitting here using that report for information. I bring it up. It's not valid.
I'm not saying it's not valid. It is valid. The information in the report is valid. I use the information in the report. I think what he's saying is that it's not the full picture. And, like I said, I was listening to the parents talk about the locks, and there's a full section in the report about the locks. There's a full section in the report about the shooter and all his history. And one has to look at that and go, absolutely, the minute the police got in that school, they royally, from what it looks like, had no leadership and screwed up. That's what it looks like on the surface, okay? Who knows what else is going to come out in the autopsy reports and the investigation and whatnot, okay? However, if this is really about doing a service to these parents and to future parents who could potentially have to deal with a tragedy like this, us arguing just to get the police were wrong, the police were right, does nobody any justice. We need to sit here and talk about everything from start to finish. We need to talk about the locks. We need to talk about the fact that multiple people knew that this kid was highly disturbed, including the people that sold him the gun and called him a school shooter looking type kid. Yeah.
So real quick,
the bailout alarms and the complacency that the police and the teachers both showed, like they were lulled in this sense of false sense of security because they were getting so many of these bailout alarms.
So let me say something. Sorry,
yes.
Drew, and again, I want to be very clear, especially to Suni, Kevin, Casey. A week ago, I was on the week 10 days. A week ago, I was on the same path as you guys. That it was not just an abject failure, but that the police officers were garbage, and I was making fun of the guy putting hand sanitizer on. But in a looking at the whole situation, the fact that there is stuff that Suni and Drew does not know, no matter how you look at it from both sides, it's enough for me to step back. And I think, and I'm going to ask a question to Drew, because I want to do two things. Ask a question to Drew, and I want to also talk about the fact that the video played by CNN and Fox News, although was video, also had something else in it. It's called a voiceover by a newscaster talking about the sensationalizing it, using the words, these police officers were inside while children were screaming and they did not respond to the screams, which is still that no matter if you talk about the phone call, no matter what timeline, whatever it is, there is no way to prove that police officers heard screaming, period. There's no way to prove that. That is a straight fact. Now, Drew, I think that we misconstrue the fact that we are fighting over the fact of whether it's failure or cowardice, etc., and people think that you're backing these police officers. Do you think that this was a complete and utter failure of police officers across the board from all different levels? Do you think that this was a failure?
Yes.
That's all we're saying, and that's my big thing. There's no way to say that this isn't the biggest failure, probably one of the biggest failures in the history of policing, if not the biggest. There's no way to disagree with that. But and this is why it's important. This is the last thing I'll say, and then you go ahead, Drew. There's a difference between blaming it on cowardice and blaming it on communication issues, locking the school down issues, and all these things. Because cowardice paints a picture on police officers that is kind of what Drew was talking about. Paints it as this horrific. All police officers are garbage. Whereas if it's policy, whether if it's training, whether if it's communication, whether it's because 3 police officers were dumb as shit and didn't communicate properly, which led to this issue and led to the adults dying in the ambulance and the adult dying at the actual school, that can be fixed. Cowardice cannot be fixed. And that's all I'm going to say on that. I think it's important to look to the future. Drew, go ahead and respond to that, and then Suni, go ahead.
What people don't realize is, listen, there's a bedroom community in the district where I worked on the midnight shift. I was a shift commander, and one of the deputies pulled up at the light, and this is again, we're in the era of COVID, and we're in the era of George Floyd. And we're talking about just some 30-something white lady housewife with big glasses, rolls down her window and just yells to the 20-something deputy sitting next to him. He's just sitting in a traffic light, just waiting to go, waiting for the green light. And she yells, "Fuck you, you fucking murderer." Okay, that's in Tampa, Florida. And she's talking about something that happened with Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So please don't try to tell me that there is no trickle effect when you hold little signs that say they were cowards because all of America sees that. And if they were cowards, let's call them cowards when it's time to call them cowards. But we don't know that. We assume that, and we assume because we saw a video that they were cowards. But I'm not calling them cowards. And I think any cop out there worth their weight in salt better realize when you delegitimize law enforcement by calling them cowards, you're a coward yourself.
I don't agree with anything you just said. I think that's an opinion.
How?
I'm not shocked.
I know you're not. It's because I don't blindly kiss the fucking cop's ass. I'm not doing that.
Because you don't need to. You're looking through a microscope and you just want to find the one thing that's wrong. But you don't.
Can I ask everybody here? When have you ever seen me in support of cops?
Who?
Yeah.
You?
Yeah.
Yeah, plenty.
So
I
please
have.
throw your stuff away. I'm not looking for anything with police officers. Do you think I want to be talking about law enforcement in America this way? I don't think any functioning American who understands how the country works is even remotely wanting to do that. But I can't sit by and watch this hypocrisy. I'm going to bring up several different groups that you guys use names for, and you're not worried about how it's going to affect society and the community. You're not. You don't give a damn when you refer to somebody as a thug or a degenerate. You say it. You know why? Because sometimes they fit the bill. It is what it is. If someone looks like they were scared or they were unsure of themselves, there's nothing wrong with the average American citizen to point that out and say, bro, this doesn't look right to me. They look like they're being
There's nothing wrong with that if that's the case. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that if that's the actual case.
It doesn't have to be the case. People are visual. We will call someone a thug because they look like a thug, whether we know they're a thug or not.
No. I'm talking about coward. You're making this parallel that it's okay to throw around thug because sometimes if the shoe fits, wear it. So it's okay for us to call you cowards because, well, in this case, the shoe fit. But I'm not telling you the shoe fit. You're saying it did.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there is no fight like this to stop anyone from using those terms when we are looking at someone or we are observing their behavior. That is all I'm saying.
All right. I'll tell you where it rubs cops the wrong way. I'm not speaking for all cops. I'm speaking for me. When the same thing that Kevin talked about, kissing the wife on the lips and strapping on a bulletproof vest, think about that, and the badge and the gun belt and sweating your whatever you want to sweat off in the middle of July in the heat of Tampa, Florida, without prejudice, going to save anyone's life at any time. You know you're ready to answer that call at any time. And you have no apprehensions about doing it. It might be your last call. It might not. And you get some peanut gallery saying they're cowards without full facts.
This is why.
Okay. No, I'm tired. I'm tired of my name being brought up. I'm tired of my name being brought up.
No, I have
Nobody
to
brought your name up.
I have to go after
I did, but
Okay, Suni.
I have to go. This is why there will never be a bridge between the average citizen and cops. Because
you're too close-minded.
You keep appealing to authority on me when I'm simply having a dialogue with
No. That's what you're assigning me. No. I'm a retired cop, Suni. I'm not a cop.
I'm not saying that you are. I said appeal to authority. I'm not calling you a cop, but you do represent police officers. That's why you're on here talking, because you have experience there.
I misunderstood. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
So I'm just being honest. I'm a citizen talking to a representative of the police force, right?
Right.
I am a representation for, let's just say, Republicans or conservatives. Someone's interaction with me is going to change how they look at the rest of conservatism because some people are just ignorant like that. They'll let one bad experience provide for the rest. And I'm being honest. Engaging in dialogue like this creates mistrust. And I said this to you earlier, and you said good. I think that's a very, very poor way to approach someone giving you criticism or pushback. You kept
but it's only good.
You don't know because you're a citizen. as if
No,
I don't talk to law enforcement or like just
it's
because
only
we're
good
not
enough for you, though.
doesn't mean we can't give a common sense constructive criticism that applies.
Okay, Suni, it's only good enough for you, though, right? I mean, like, you're allowed to lob these grenades, but I'm not. And here's another thing I want you to understand about me. And this is not personal. This is not against Suni. This is against the dialogue that we're having. I've waited 29 freaking years to talk like this. I haven't been able to do it because we get disciplined into oblivion if we say things like I'm saying. You just, when people want to make us the bad guy, and I stand up and say, we were bad, let's assign the blame for the things they did wrong, not what you assume they did wrong. What's wrong with that? Really? What's wrong with saying, let's slow down and look at the facts? Let's wait for all of the facts.
There's nothing wrong with that. But
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with waiting for the facts. But when the facts come out and they support what a lot of people have been saying, or when video comes out and it supports what a lot of people have been saying, I think you should give credence to that. People aren't just, I'm speaking about the 6 people on the screen, 5 people on the screen. We're not pulling facts from the crack of our ass. I mean, Kev did a few times, but I'm well versed in this case. I read the same document, the exact same
one time with the door that was in front of the man.
I didn't hear what you said, but
here.
All I'm saying is, if we want this gap to be bridged, then there has to be some sort of reasoning with people who are very harsh and critical of the departments. It has to happen. I deal with it. I get called a nigger, a coon, and every other thing. But I have to sit and talk to people and listen to what's going on with them. We can't keep silencing citizens. We can't.
No, we can't. We can, but is the responsibility of the bridge to be built on law enforcement, or do you meet halfway?
Both play a role.
Okay, well,
absolutely. Right. If someone is coming to you with a valid criticism and they're saying this doesn't look right and I'm not happy with this, the default can't be you don't know procedure or you're just not a cop. That can't be the default.
But the default isn't that you're not a cop and you don't know procedure. The default is, here's what happened. Here are the facts. And I can add a flavor of, I did this for a long time. Like I don't know how else to describe this to you. Like it's kind of like you read the manual for the new fryer or you read the manual for the new stove that you bought, but that doesn't mean you're an electrician. I read the manual and I know how to hook it up. Like it's just and like I always get an eye roll and a big smile and a laugh out of you, but that's what I'm saying. You're like, no, unless I say it and I agree to it, then it's bullshit.
Okay.
And that's how are you going to build a bridge doing that?
Okay. Well, let's first and foremost acknowledge the bridge builders aren't going to be the same people that say, yeah, 99% of cops are good. But as soon as anyone starts criticizing them, starts finding every excuse in the book, oh, they didn't know the children were in there. Well, the man, you know what? I was wrong.
But you're calling them excuses.
But I was not. I am sorry. Listen. Excuse me here. I was not. You've mentioned me multiple times, and I have been quietly and patiently waiting to speak. All right. I may not have known that was the wrong door, but I knew that was the husband of the woman that was in the room being killed. Okay, and I knew he was being held back. So when I say these men are being cowards, it's because I observed them running back. Because I knew no matter how little experience and training I had, I as a man, as someone who values the most valuable resource in our community, which is children, I would have died to get in that room. And I know breaching procedure 101. I know the first thing they tell you about breaching, which is chances are somebody might die. The second person in the room is most likely to be shot, right? I know the whole point of breaching is how to mitigate the fact that you don't know what's behind that door. And when you get in the room, you don't know where the assailants are going to be. You don't know what's going to be in front of you. And you don't know who's going to be shot first. So I don't want to hear anything about that because the whole point of breaching is mitigating the fact that chances are someone's going to die. And the only reason you don't breach on a door that everybody knows is broken, that they would have found out did not lock had they taken 30 seconds to crawl up to the door and try the handle, right? Is that, look at that. All you have to do is crawl up and jiggle it. Somebody even might die doing that. And you know what? Whatever it takes to rescue children behind that door. Because that's the opposite of what cowards do. The reason why I came to the conclusion of these guys are cowards is I asked myself seriously, why wouldn't I take this action? And I assume I'm probably going to be a coward. That's how I'm willing to call them that, because I know the only reason I wouldn't go in that door is because faced with that, I probably wouldn't, because I'm a coward, right? So I know why men did not breach that door or try to breach that door. What I can't stand is how earlier I specifically mentioned one of the biggest problems is the fact that we have police officers in communities where they say things like 99% of cops are good people. And these are good people. And I can't speak out against cops because rather than just saying, these cops acted like cowards and that's a reflection of their leadership, because you and I both know, Drew, good leaders get their men in that door. Good leaders train them well enough, maybe not, but good leaders motivate them well enough. They give them the understanding of their responsibility. They tell them what their job is to the community. They tell them, I hope you know your job is mostly easy because you're just community police officers for Uvalde.
But Kevin, who's not saying the leadership sucked balls? Who's not saying the leadership wasn't
because
terrible?
He's sitting here telling me I'm part of the problem when he is the most emblematic part of the problem.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree.
No,
because
you're
I
not.
think that
okay, cool. You're that's what you're gonna do. But I'm also gonna continue.
I'm a citizen. I'm a citizen. Yes. I'm not a police officer.
Yes,
and I am able to see things in both ways. I can see the fact that I cannot prove that 95% of those police officers knew that there was kids in the room. Any police officer that did, I will say is an absolute piece of shit coward and deserves every fucking thing that comes to them without question. But until we know exactly whose fuck up it was, I'm not going to take 397 police officers and say that they're all garbage. And guess what? Am I a 99% of police officers is good kind of guy? Absolutely. And honestly, I hear Drew calling them out too, but you're so caught up on the word cowards that you need him to say this. And I'm sorry, Kevin. Cops in Uvalde, Texas don't have the training that soldiers do on breaching doors. Should they? Maybe they should. Maybe they should.
Yes, you know what? Maybe they should, but you know what? 2 lessons, 1 lesson, and it gives you at least the understanding of what you need to do. Courage gives you the ability to do it, having only done it once in your life. Okay? That's what gives you the ability to do it. Bravery is the ability to do it at all. Courage is the ability to do it knowing that you barely know how to do it at all.
I'm not calling any of these cops brave.
So
I'm not saying
they're not brave. They're not courageous. What are they then?
They're idiots. They did a terrible job. That's
what does it mean to be absent of courage or bravery? What is the absence of courage and bravery?
That's such a black and white conversation.
No. That's cowardice. You can say apathy, but then what are the cops that don't care about the children behind the door? Would you rather they be cowards or apathetic?
Keep presenting a complete logical fallacy about thinking that every police officer
would you agree with me that courage means going through that door knowing you don't know how to do it?
Would you say courage? Absolutely, yes. And
yes. So did they not know how to do it? So did they know how to do it?
Did anybody listen? Yeah. Should they have broken their own? Well, the protocol is if you believe children are in there, you don't have to listen to leadership. I believe that was.
Hang on. The part you guys are, and I'm more on Kevin's side to be clear here. But the part we have to remember, hang on. The part we have to remember is there was a communication issue to get to the radios of the officers. So they didn't have clear communication. So yes, they could have got there. But where I see where Kevin is coming from, what did that Master Chief do when he was at the door as soon as a bullet was fired through the door? He retreated all the way back outside of even close to firing range. The Master Chief himself and the people on the opposing side of the hallway were within 5 feet of the door.
Yep.
And so there is no reason for that Master Chief of that department
Agreed.
to retreat that far. And we went over that last week. That's where a lot of Kevin is coming from is why? Like, why this didn't need to happen. They were there, go. You were there, go.
We all
And
agree. We're not disagreeing.
We agree.
That
We
means
are.
you're cowardly. If you retreat that far, you are cowardly.
No, I mean, I think you're cow, and I agree. The Master Chief.
Or
I
they're
think there's
apathetic.
some major issues. Master Chief, the guy that made the call, thinking he didn't know what side of the building it is on, and he's huffing and puffing like he's 800 fucking pounds. And
Yes.
then Ariando, or however you pronounce his name. The fact that they didn't have radios working and he was the leader. I think those three to start with, without having the full scope, are absolutely in charge of the failure here. And yes, I will even go to say those are absolute cowards, piece of shit police officers. And I don't think a lifetime of not policing is enough. I think they should be prosecuted. Personal opinion. But as a whole, how can we blame their poor leadership, poor communication? How can we blame everybody for their massive F-ups?
That's what I'm getting to. You follow your leader, don't you?
Yeah.
So if your leadership is failing you and they retreat, don't you follow them?
Yeah.
There was
So
no
whose
leadership.
fault is it?
Say that again, Casey.
So whose fault is it?
The leadership.
So by the leadership doing the actions that they did, caused the reaction of everybody else and people to die.
I don't think there was a clear leader defined, to tell you the truth.
No, there's a Master
huge
Chief.
lack.
There is a Master Chief, and we went over that last week. He is the guy that was at the front, at the door, wearing the white plaid. He was also one that also removed the one girl from the classroom 50 minutes later, and he says it. That's how I know his title is he says it out loud in the video. We know he was the Master Chief. So,
But is he actually leading is the question.
No,
no matter what,
that's the problem.
Just because he failed at leading and he's supposed to be the leader does not make him clear of wrongdoing, and that's why I am 100% okay with when all findings come out. If he was a coward, if he did not do his job to lead, if he did not do his job to communicate, fucking bury him. Absolutely.
So Drew,
would you agree, Drew, on that?
That was my question. I was getting into is Drew. When it comes to how those processes work, I like here at work. I work in the software industry, so I put a lot of the stuff on the leader, or my supervisor, or the director, or whatever. Is that how it would work with a police officer, or no?
No, Arredondo actually submitted a active shooter protocol probably a year and a half, 2 years prior to this, and he specifically wrote in the protocol that he would be the commander and would coordinate all law enforcement activities. And there was even an order of succession, so it would be him, then it would be his deputy chief and whatnot. It gets a little complicated here, so my apologies for throwing in experience, but
no, I want to hear experience. That was one of my things, is understanding what is the common practice that when you know.
When you have to follow the NIMS, it's National Incident Management Protocol, National Incident Management System or Response or something. When you follow the NIMS, it's command should always be passed to somebody on the outside, and it's going to be so. Here's how it works: first one on scene, you're calling the shots, you got command of the whole thing. Then somebody on the outside needs to be running the show, because when somebody on the outside is running the show, and it even says this in the house in the interim report, they can find the key quicker. They're not in the battle, they're not engaged in battle, so clearer heads are going to prevail. There's several reasons for that. One of the colossal failures of this whole incident is that nobody on the outside took command. There was one guy that tried, the deputy chief, and he tried to set up a command post in the funeral home, and he got overridden by half the people out there. I think what people miss sometimes is the sheer chaos that goes into one of these scenes. So it really does take a true leader to stand up and say, hold the fuck on. Everyone just take a deep breath. Are there kids in there or not? But that didn't occur. What everybody assumed is that Arredondo is running the show in there. That's what his protocol said to do. What Nim says is somebody else should have showed up and assumed command on the outside, because they can hear the 911 calls, and if need be, send a runner in to tell the people on the inside what's going on. Those are among the colossal failures. So what I'm saying is, let's fix the failures that actually occurred. Let's not just assume that because X happened that they are Y. Let's wait for more facts to come out and determine exactly what they did wrong. We know that they did wrong. Those cops are not, by the way, like, it's anecdotal, and it's probably not going to mean anything to some of you, but when they opened the door, when they breached and they took that guy out and found out that there were kids in there were cops that were dropping to their knees, just like fainting at the thought of this. It's so easy to say, well, it's dumb to not assume that there are other factors involved. There was an assembly that day. It was a graduation. It was an early release. There were other empty rooms. The rooms are dark. There are a bunch of things. Like, people talk about also, and I might be getting a little off topic, so bring me back in if I am, but people talk about, well, why didn't they just shoot him from the window? Well, you can't. You can, but just imagine, last time you were in a movie theater and then you walked outside and it was broad daylight. That's what those cops would be up against, because in an active shooter protocol, you're going to shut the lights out and you're going to put the blinds down. So it would require someone to what they call break and rake, and you're looking into a dark classroom, but you're silhouetted perfectly. Okay, so now you can cover below the window. However, you're not going to be able to identify where the shooter is, and you can't just blindly shoot into a classroom if, under your theory, there are a bunch of kids in there. You can't. Correct. It's not feasible to do. So there's no short answer to this. It was a colossal failure of communication of who was in charge. I guarantee, and this is me putting words in his mouth or speaking what's on his mind. Arredondo, and I said this in my video, the key to that room was something shiny. He was thinking all along, there are no kids in there that I know of. I pray there are no kids in there. And two, I am the fucking chief of police of this school, and I don't have a key. How embarrassing is that? I got 200 cops here wanting to do whatever I want them to do, and I can't even get in the fucking door. So I think things like that are the failures. I think to assume that they knew specifically there were kids in there and they just kind of stood around and checked their phones or played with hand sanitizer. Right. I think it's a very slippery slope. I think it's a very dangerous assumption.
Was the husband.
Hang on one second, Kevin. Okay?
Yes, I know.
I agree with you, Drew, but I'm just getting my last thing in here about this topic, and then maybe we'll move on. But I agree with you in a lot of these senses that, is there bigger things to focus on? Sure. But these are things, hand sanitizer. Checking your phone, I give a pass because it's supposedly his wife, right? And so, if it was me, I'm going to be checking my phone. If my wife was in that classroom, I'm checking my phone. I don't give a flying F. I'm going to be checking my phone and communicating and then figuring out how to get in there ASAP, right? And it won't be 50 minutes. I promise you that. However, the big emphasis that we can all come to agreement on, there is a lot of dropped balls that we can focus on and improve, right? Everyone agrees we can improve on this situation. Could they have done better? Abso-freaking-lutely. I personally believe we could have saved lives, and we could have just went in there in a little bit different of a strength, is what I'm saying. And that's a lot of my presence is We got there 50 minutes. Why couldn't we get there at 30 or 25 minutes, right? And I think a lot of that is where this passion is coming from, is we would have been able to, I think we should have been able to do that. I don't see any reason why, but that's where this passion's coming from, is there's room for improvement on many levels.
Don't we all agree? I don't think any of us disagree with that, with your statement, Casey. So
no,
why
did it take us an hour and 30 minutes to get to that point?
Because of absolutely a complete failure to have a real conversation. That's why. But I'll get to that at another time. But Suni, I have a question, because, and this is, I think that as level heads are prevailing as we're trying to get out of this conversation, I want to know exactly what you disagree with that say Drew and I are saying. What is the big disagreement? Because I feel like we are saying the exact same thing minus one piece of verbiage. So that's my big question. So what exactly is it that you think that you disagree with me or with Drew on, or even Mo?
It sounds like you guys are making excuses. When your kids do something wrong, it's, this was wrong. How do we fix it? Right? There is no rationalizing. Well, you did wrong because, oh, you didn't have this, or you didn't have that. And there's a million excuses for why this went wrong. We know that, and I'm more so representing the general public when I hear these conversations. And I'm going to be honest, Casey's right. It's like pulling teeth. And I had this conversation with Tatum. It is like pulling teeth for someone to just stop at, it was a failure. This is almost like someone slapping you, right? And then they say, but I said sorry.
Did anybody
but
not
who
say
hasn't
it was a
said?
failure? Who
I
hasn't
want to know
said it's not a
who
failure?
said it
I feel
wasn't
like
a failure.
I feel like I'm eating
It
lemon
was
pills.
it was the
You
emotion.
know what it is?
No one said it. It was
I'll just
emotion.
explain it. This is like saying, I'm sorry, but your
I know.
butt fills out the entire I'm sorry.
You know what? You know what I.
Okay, yeah, they're
But
wrong.
Suni,
But nobody wants to hear
just,
that. He's asking me
what
I'm disagreeing with. I'm disagreeing with all the banter, and then you guys adding a but. That's what you're saying.
But I just
go ahead, Drew.
I just respectfully want to ask, like, when you're asking for an explanation, or you're not actually asking for an explanation, you're telling me what I did wrong, and I just need to accept it. Is that right? Because any explanation I give, you call an excuse, and you say it's a but.
I never said you were wrong.
Okay, Suni, but you just gave this whole diatribe about how law enforcement is just saying, and even Tatum just stopped short at saying, but what we're trying to do is explain, and you take offense for some reason when somebody says, I have experience in this, and let me try to shed some light on the issue with you. And for whatever reason, I'm just trying to tell you, look, I get it. I get what you're saying. I get that we should have tried the door. But they didn't. And here's a reason why. And what you're saying is there are no reasons why. They're all excuses, and we just need to eat it. Fair?
Yes, because that's life.
Okay.
That's life. We apply that to anyone who fucks up. You messed up.
No, we don't.
But hold on.
So if it's life, then why?
Be consistent. When people.
So if it's life, then why am I not allowed to identify what we did?
No, I'm gonna break this down to the justice system directly for Suni real quick. So yes, there's no reason for excuses except for the fact that is the difference in many cases between manslaughter and between murder. There is different levels based on that why or but or if, and that's why it's important. Essentially we're having a discussion on whether or not this was failure because or essentially murder. Or cowardice, murder by cowardice. Like there's so many different levels, and that's why it's important to have a difference in opinion.
I agree with you, difference of opinion, but where she's coming from, let me try to explain this in a different way. What we're describing here is you used murder as an intent, right? Versus a intent to protect. There is a difference there, which
Absolutely.
is the same as driving a very fast vehicle down a highway, right? So you don't intend to harm anybody, but you might. That's a little bit different than murder, right? This person had nothing but intent to remove children from the planet. And so the intent should be the same to remove him from the planet. And so that is where the problem is coming from is I just want my big thing where I'm coming from being the middle ground is it took how many minutes? Okay, how can we cut that in half?
Agreed.
How can we cut that in
Absolutely.
half? Let's go. Let's
Casey,
figure
how
out
does
how
call
we
it,
cut that in
how
half.
does referring to them as cowards actually change the
Here.
future of police?
I-
It doesn't.
Can I answer that?
I don't use those words. Somebody else has.
Casey, I'm sorry,
can I answer
Kevin.
that?
Kevin, go
Okay.
ahead and speak.
So the reason why it's important to acknowledge what the problem was is because acknowledging the problem allows you to find the solution. Well, why would cops in that situation act cowardly? Well, it's not because they're cowards by heart, because I guarantee you cowards don't actually volunteer for the police force.
Correct.
But you can be positively motivated and still act cowardly in the moment when your courage is needed most. And that is a different problem. So the question becomes, why is it when they were presented with the single greatest problem they're ever going to have, children being killed in a classroom, they acted cowardly? They refused to use the courage. No, they refused to use the courage and bravery required to get behind that door because they might die or they're not trained well enough.
You keep using the same argument. You keep using the same argument in disagreement. I'm going to ask, I want to raise a hand. How many people in here think that over 95%, think that
I would have acted cowardly.
Sorry, hold on. Wait, how am I saying this? That 5% or more, 5% or more of those police officers knew that there was children in the classroom.
So that's
how many? Raise your hand if you think that 5% or more knew that there was children in the classroom.
And honestly, I don't give a shit if there is even 1% in that classroom.
You assume there is.
You go. Right?
Just like
here's the thing. That's your job, right? And my thing is
it's not your job if you don't know.
But Anthony, you're missing the point.
Let me finish. You don't know, but they also didn't know that one girl was in the classroom next to them. They didn't know anything. So there was a lot of failures in communication. However, but when you are trying to save children's lives, you go. Go.
Yes, that's what,
and
that's a strong society.
And so that's where the part comes from. But we have to also, I get what Drew is saying, and Suni, give me 1 second, okay, and then you could jump in. But I that's where I'm coming from. Is yes, the officers failed on training. The officers didn't have everything at their disposal to go into that room. Yes, this entire police force, all departments, every single one of them, didn't do a freaking thing they should have done. In my opinion, they should have gone. And when you have one kid with a rifle, and you have, what is it? Let's say I'm going to round up. Let's say it's 20, 30 officers with handguns. 20, 30 officers with handguns. Can they not take out a kid with a rifle? You should be able to, and there's ways of it being done very easily. And
but Drew pointed out one of the potentials. What if there was? Again, what if there was innocent kids in that classroom? If you go barraging in there, just think. And no,
but but there's windows. There's windows. You know where that person is located. Because he could shoot it. He could shoot
up in a book closet.
No, but he could shoot at the door.
This is the part right here. This is reasonable.
Yeah,
I agree. It's reasonable to think that there is.
So when I say cowards, cowards is an emotion. Everybody capable of
Kevin,
that.
The only problem with coward is the same reason.
Yes, because it's bad to call cops cowards, and if you call veterans cowards, cowards doesn't matter.
It's just like saying ignorant. Coward and ignorant is perceived as
so
crazy.
Am I not allowed to be Am I not allowed to be as precise as humanly possible with my language?
You are.
Am I not allowed
I'm just telling you why you get the reaction.
Yeah. So that's not on me because I'm using the correct word. I'm not using it derogatorily. I'm using it to identify the problem so that we can find a solution for it and make sure it doesn't happen again. But our inability to acknowledge, yeah, it was cowardly, but it's not their fault because clearly people don't sign up to be conscious.
Who said it wasn't their fault? Kevin, how do you fix cowardice?
Anthony, come on, man. Like,
Kevin, no, I'm going to ask you a question. How do you fix...
You called me illogical. Let me finish an argument. I'm giving you premises. Let me finish an argument here.
How do you fix cowardice, Kevin?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it? If you're willing to acknowledge it's cowardice, you go, okay, so if it requires cowardice for men to not breach that door, where is the cause of it? Because it's not them inherently. Something else is causing this. Is it bad leadership? Okay, so it's bad leadership. Is this bad leadership emblematic of just Uvalde and that individual? Or is it something broader about our society? Is it something broader that is collapsing within our society? Is this emblematic of what is about to become our future because of the men we are producing as a society? The fact that more and more men are growing up fatherless and incapable of being strong members of their society. We are having a smaller pool to pull from for people that can lead communities and make sure men go through that door. Because I know when I was in, there are leaders I would have followed behind a door. And there are leaders that I would have absolutely been like, I hope to God it's him that's fucking shot. Because that is what leadership is. That is what I am talking about right now.
I agree.
Because of people's inability to be honest, when I call them cowards, you take it as a derogatory. It's the same thing with mental health. It's right. If I say you have a mental illness, that's like, oh my God, that means I'm a lesser person. No. If you want to be honest, if you want to address it, if you want to come to a solution, you have to be able to take the words as what they are and not impugn motive into them, which is what is happening. When I say they're being cowards, I'm not trying to attack them. I'm saying this is what happened.
Okay, I agree, but I think verbiage matters, and I think what you're doing to direct that kind of statement towards them answered the question that you just asked me. Why is there not more men willing to step up and be police officers? Because we're painting a broad brush on about 370 of these police officers. So guess what? If I was a police officer and I'm responding directly to 21 SN, how can you say they don't know what if there's...
It would make me pretty fucking terrified for my children, wouldn't it?
Okay, I'm going to continue.
Make me pretty terrified for my community, wouldn't it?
So here's the issue. So fact is, the leadership, who we all agree absolutely completely failed, is now taking the lead from about 370 something, or taking the lead from these people. You got 375 police officers that were saying we're all pieces of garbage, right? So there is a potential that there is kids in the room. They don't know. They're following their leadership, and they go, if I act rogue, and again, I still wish they would have, but if I act rogue and I go in there and there's living children, and I'm the one that breaks rank and shoots in the room and kills a child, then damned if I do. If I don't go in now, I'm damned if I don't, because of the fact that my leadership hasn't figured out what is actually going on. And as we mentioned in the very beginning of this, Chubby Bunny that made the phone call into dispatch saying that it was a barricaded subject has been very clear that fact is that misinformation could have been spread throughout the group, and the few people that knew that there were people in there, kids in there, are the ones that failed to truly have that conversation. And even the guy, last thing I'm going to say, the guy that Suni I know sent over and Mo sent over, if anybody can remember his name, the tactical response guy, that video that I watched, he was very hard on the police officers. I don't believe he ever used the word cowardice, and he referred to the fact that the BORTAC guys, when they went in there, had absolutely no idea that they were going to be around dead children. So somebody did not communicate that information. That is the person to blame. That is who failed. That is who killed those children. But to blame 300 and something police officers for an abject failure of leadership and lack of information because you're playing Monday morning quarterback and because you used to be a soldier, I think is fucking disgusting. I
think that the fact that 370 men were standing there and none of them went into the room shows that there's a pretty big problem.
I think that 370 men not going in there probably should tell you there was probably a reason they couldn't get in there, like a fucking physical obstacle. Such as a locked door.
The door didn't work. The door didn't work. It was not working. It was not locked.
But you don't know it was locked.
They should have known.
Clue.
They should have known.
What do you mean they should have?
The door wasn't. Was the door locked? Yes or no?
No.
We don't
There you go.
know.
No, we
No
know that
no
it
one
wasn't. We know
knows.
that it wasn't now. They didn't.
We know that
They
the
didn't
door
try.
was opened by a key.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
know
well,
it was
and
locked when they tried to open it.
Yeah.
We know
Okay,
very
so
specifically they didn't try it. We don't know if the door was locked. We don't know if the shooter shut the door behind him. We don't know.
well, I think we do.
I mean,
know,
it's a big
but
joke.
They
I'm
did
sure.
not.
It's a laugh
The issue
fest, but
we know they did not is the thing. And again, that is a complete failure on their part. I'm not saying it wasn't a complete failure. All right. So real quick, because I do have to go, and I appreciated the conversation for the most part. I do want to do some because I want to talk vaccines real quick for all of about 45 seconds. Suni, do you have to go?
Yeah, if we're gonna talk about vaccines, yeah.
It's going to be short because I think it's
Suni, stay.
crazy shit. Actually, I'm going
Nobody
to pull it
wants
up.
to talk
Suni,
about
go ahead and say your final words, then I'm going to talk vaccines, and we're going to do the final exit here.
What? No, you're supposed to talk about Suni getting the vaccine.
Oh, Suni, you're getting the vaccine? Is that for real? Just kidding. I know better.
We're teasing. It's all good.
So let me and Suni, you might actually find this one interesting, and I'm going to keep it short. So I had a friend of mine that reached out to me, sent me an article that was done a couple things, couple major issues going on right now. Of course, there's a train when I'm talking about vaccines. It's like Suni
That's
put it
a
there.
sign. Nobody
It's a
wants
sign.
to hear about the fucking vaccine.
So there is
they're
an article.
transporting a bunch of vaccines.
Yeah,
Right.
there is an. Oh, this is such bad timing. There's a Suni. Say your final words, then I'll come back and talk the vaccines to wrap the show.
I sent the train.
Hey man, I'm like 1,000% back the blue. I just don't blindly support any and everything they do. And I'm not going to offer excuses I wouldn't offer to my own husband if he acted in that way. I just wouldn't. Good conversation though. It's interesting to hear the different perspectives. I don't have a problem with anyone's opinion. I just think it's productive for citizens to have this raw and honest conversation with people who are representatives of the cop community. And I said this to Sed and Ryan Tillman and all these cops that I interact with on the daily. I appreciate their stance and how they have humbled themselves to come and talk to the average person and explain a lot of different things. Shout out to them. Shout out to all the officers that take their time to have somewhat rough but peaceful dialogue. And thanks for letting me know about this. I wanted to talk about Uvalde, so those are my closing statements.
Thanks,
God bless you, Suni.
Can you pull me in the back? I still want to watch. He said keep going. I don't know what else.
Hell no. Hell no. We're not going to pull you in the back.
Okay.
It's even louder, so keep going.
Go ahead and mute.
So Drew, if you want to give us a second, tell us where you're from, and how we can meet up with you and follow you.
Born and raised in Niagara Falls, New York, but I left as soon as I could, and I joined the Air Force. I got out here in Tampa, Florida. I knew this was going to be my home, and I joined the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, where I stayed for about 29 years. You can find me on social media at Drew_Breezy on Instagram. I have Drew Breezy Uncuffed, a Facebook page, and Drew Breezy on YouTube, and Andrew Baxter on LinkedIn. My cell phone stays on 24/7. If you just feel lonely and want to call me, I don't care.
Well, that just got awkward. Just kidding. Anyway,
Drew's offering his services.
So before I let you guys do your final thing, and thanks for saying that, Drew, and I'll say my final piece with the vaccine. So the interesting thing that I got is a couple weird pieces of data today that just keep continuing to pile up, people messaging me, etc. But this is an old friend of mine that said, did you see this article? And this is in Yahoo. Largest study to date shows how COVID vaccines affect periods. The percentages on these were over 40% out of 39,000 people. She was actually part of the study. She was a healthy woman that had children in her 40s, and all of a sudden her life has been completely different. Major issues post-vaccine, menstrual cycle. They were dismissing it as age, coincidence. She developed eczema for the first time, shingles, high blood pressure, and she's 47, things that were never there, and it happened right after the vaccine, and there was a lot of this being shown. The article by Yahoo, can't believe they shared it because they have to start, but they actually said the weird thing is there's no control in this article. there's no control in this study. So we got to just assume that there's a chance that it was just coincidence. 39,000 people and 40-something%. Cool. Second thing, my girlfriend Kelly's horse chiropractor. Yes, that's a thing, and cool as shit to watch. His father, we just found out, passed away in February from dementia. He was 69 years old. He had no issues before he got the vaccine, was a huge vaccine believer, got the vaccine, got dementia, a very rare case, and they started pulling the blood work, and the doctors who couldn't by law tell him has pulled him aside and did everything but tell him that it was related to the vaccine. This is the issue. This is where you guys are going to shit your brains out, and then I'm done about the vaccine. So he paid for extra autopsy stuff done after the fact to see where the actual, if mRNA had any effect, if it had ties to his DNA, if it had ties to his dementia and what happened to him. Once he paid out of pocket to a state-sponsored or state school university to do the study, the results they found, they determined they are not allowed to share with him. That speaks volumes. He paid for it, and they cannot disclose the findings that they had. That should terrify us. I'm sorry. The more we're seeing young people die, the more we're seeing these random, the ones that they're deeming suicide and people finding themselves in a room, I feel like that's kind of a cop-out at this point, because if I see one more 37, 42-year-old, 41, 26, I mean, suicide is a big deal, but I think we're missing something there. With that said, guys, Drew, thank you for being on the show. Casey, Mo, thanks for getting the guest. Was not the best discussion I've ever seen out of this group. If anything, probably one of the worst. No offense, but offense should be taken. And that does not reflect on you, Drew. I'm being honest. Like I call it spade a spade. I think it was an abject failure to have a conversation about an abject failure. But I would encourage you guys. I have another police officer on this week. I do think it was entertaining, however. But I have a police officer on this week. His name is Jordan Nelson. He was kicked off of the not kicked off. I'm sorry. He quit the Kansas City Police Department in 2016, and he had a violation in 2013. And I keep saying incorrect facts. He had no violation. He arrested somebody in 2013. The ACLU and those social woke justice mob picked something up in 2018 after he'd been retired. And they pulled footage back and decided to press charges, to which they ultimately failed. They got $20,000 out of the Kansas City Police Department when they asked for $5 million. Why? Because he was on PCP and he tried banging down the door of a 92-year-old. There's so much more to it. And the fact that I've gotten hate mail already from the people that hate this family and call it the BLM. It's just absolutely absurd. So I hope you guys catch it. Follow Blunt Force Discussion, the other page on YouTube, Blunt Force Discussion YouTube, Blunt Force Discussion Facebook. You'll see it all there. Thank you guys. Thank you, Drew. Mo, I like the guest. I like it. There was a lot of veracity. I enjoyed it.
I don't know if my guest likes me anymore. He's probably like, what the fuck did you just get me
I love
into?
and respect all of you, even Kevin. Please go. Answer.
All right. I'm going to take it easy, guys. You guys can wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. And take it easy.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Oops. Hold on.
I
I can't get out. I think he left too. I can't get out of the damn room because I'm on my damn phone because everything. Oh my God.
Were you ending the show or were we just saying goodbye to you? I think that was the confusion.
I'm just trying